next speaker is Dr. K. Shashirega, Assistant Professor of English, the American College, Madurai, Tamil Nadu, India. Dr. K. Shashirega has 20 years and 9 months of teaching experience and organized national level conferences, workshops, faculty development programs, and chairperson for paper presentations. And Dr. K. Shashirega also a research supervisor and a language consultant for stylics, proofreadings, and editing. And Dr. K. Shashirega published research papers on 10 journals, international journals, and presented 17 papers in conferences, and published 2 book chapters, and handled 17 technical sections, and submitted 3 project proposals, and also a lifetime member of ELTAI and Indian Society for Technical Education. Now I hand over this section to you, madam.
So the session topic for this slot is research writing. Is it going to be a conference paper or journal paper? On this topic, I would like to make my presentation. And the slide focuses on the research writing and the process of research writing. There are several stages, like as a researcher, attending conferences and presenting papers is a part of the research work. And let's see what is the research article writing and how it is going to be a kind of a manuscript writing, conference paper, journal article. I would like to throw light on all these aspects. And methodologically, this presentation will be briefed on what is the research article writing. See, research article writing, there is a difference between thesis writing and research article writing. In the thesis writing, we all know it is a holistic work and complete documentation, whereas research article writing is a part of the complete research. So that we always convert it as a kind of a conference paper or else a journal paper. So it was actually in the research writing, I mean in the thesis writing, we'll be covering all the research what we have done through several stages and at least for the period of 3 to 5 years. But in a paper writing, we will be choosing a single concept from the whole research. So that is a very small segment of research. That always we will make it as a research article writing. And when we make it as an article writing or a research paper writing or for a conference paper, we will be just try to justify why the theory has been selected. See, for example, if it is literature based or education based or socialistic based, always there is going to be a theory or principle or law to justify or how our research fits into the theory or fits into the principle or fits into the law. Accordingly, we will make our presentation. So that is what here I mean by research article writing. And the selection of the theory, or else if it is science-based research, there is going to be a particular software to develop our idea. So there we have to justify why the particular theory has been selected or why the particular software has been chosen for the paper development. So when it is a full thesis or when it is a complete research documentation, we will provide all the details. Whereas in a research paper, very particularly, we have 2 areas in our mind, that is a conference paper or a journal publication. For both, our focus would be only on the small segment of research, and there we will talk about why a particular theory or a law or a principle has been selected, and we will try to justify it. And if it is science-based or computer-based, there is going to be experiments, or it is laboratory experiments or software. That also we will be provided. And once after justifying or introducing the theory or the software, what we are going to focus on that particular paper, we will be talking about, or as a researcher, we will brief how the investigation or what are the experiments or how the study has been conducted in a phased manner. That would also form a part of our research article writing. And if we follow this, the outcome is going to be a camera-ready research paper of about 3,000 to 7,000 word counts. So here, please try to understand, the focus is more on paper writing. So I'm just talking about word limit also. If it is a whole document, whole academic research documentation, I will not be talking about the word limit. Since it is a paper for a conference or for a journal, I'm just talking about the word limit also. All right. So actually, the theme of this virtual workshop is research writing and manuscript writing. Here, I would like to make the subtle difference between the manuscript writing and the research writing. See, manuscript writing, as researchers, we all know that is the kind of the first step towards the research process. So, the manuscript writing is a part of our research work. Using that process, we are just going to see how a paper to be prepared and how it has to be either presented for a conference or to be published in a journal. So a conference paper is also a part of research work. Once after registering PhD or a research, always the guides suggest us to start attending the conferences only. So that is the good research start for the researchers. So once you decided to enroll yourself or to register yourself for a PhD or for any research program, the first step what you can start doing is, or a first step you can think of, is always attending conferences. And when it is a conference, and writing a conference paper has many advantages. The one biggest advantage is time bound. When we have to write it on our own, there won't be a kind of motivation for us to stick on to the timeline. If it is for a conference paper, naturally there is going to be a timeline. So as a researcher, keeping away all other distractions aside, we just make ourselves time bound towards the conference paper. So that is another advantage when we think of a conference paper. And the conference paper, or else a paper for a journal, it is similar in structure, yes, but the publication or the presentation forum is little different. But I would say, in a nutshell, it is a miniature of your thesis writing. So whether it is a conference paper or else a paper which you have written for journal, doesn't matter. It is going to be a miniature of thesis writing. So once you decide, yes, the conference paper, let's see what are the requisites for a conference paper or else for a journal paper. See, conference paper versus journal paper or a journal article. First, let me focus clearly about the conference paper, and then I'll just move on to the journal publication or the journal paper, so that you, as a researchers, young researchers, you will have better idea to decide whether conference paper or whether you would like to go for a journal paper. See, in every conference, there is going to be a list of thrust area. Every now and then, nowadays, through social media or in many ways, we are getting conference brochures, invitations, and other things. So there, if you see the conference theme, under the theme, there is going to be many sub-themes or else going to be the thrust area. So as per our research area or research field, we are allowed to choose from any one of those sub-themes or else the thrust area. See, the thrust area again, under a spectrum, it would cover so many macro and micro level topics. For example, if I have to say, if it is language, if it is a language related conference, it will talk about language acquisition, language development theories, and the challenges of learning second language or a foreign language, or else teaching or learning the second language or foreign language in a mixed group, in a large group. Like that, there is going to be several thrust area. And accordingly, as per our main research, any one of the thrust area can be selected. So that is what here I mean by aligning the thrust area and part of the study and experiment. Part of the study and experiment here means the researchers' area of research or the field of research. And this is the paper component. This paper component is applicable for both the conference paper and journal article. See, the paper should have a working title. The conference would have given you thrust area or sub-themes. There we are going to get some keywords. So when I say working title, you could choose the keywords from the conference, from the theme of the conference and the thrust area of the conference, and it always have to be associated with your research work. That way, frame your working title. When you align your research work and the conference theme and the thrust area, naturally your paper title is going to be a working title only. Once the working title has been selected, as a researcher, the next step is writing an abstract. See, for a conference, usually they would ask us to submit the abstract only. Once after the abstract selection, we would like, as a researcher, would ask to register for the program. That is the protocol. So you would be sending your abstract. See, though we call it as abstract, though it appears to be a kind of with minimal importance, it has its own significance. Abstract is a kind of abstract is a kind of introduction to the whole work, and it should give the completeness about what your paper aims at, what is your research question and how you have developed the findings. That has to be presented in abstract. Again, word limit is going to be there. It depends upon the conference and the host institution of the conference. It varies from 200 to 500 words. So always, while attending the conference, you could check the guidelines for paper and guidelines for submitting the abstract and other things. Accordingly, get ready with the abstract. So working title, I believe now you have a clear idea. That is the conference theme, thrust area, your research field, and keywords from those things should be helped to frame the working title. And abstract is the kind of holistic view or holistic presentation of your research paper in a small paragraph. Usually, abstract cannot be divided into 2 or 3 paragraphs. It has to be provided in a single long paragraph. Word count would always be specified in the guidelines itself. As a researcher, please check to that. And keywords, the technical terms which often we are going to use in the full-length paper has to be mentioned as keywords. So the list of words which we are repeatedly going to use in the full-length paper has to be given as keywords. This is the order to be followed again for both conference paper and research article. Then, once after the abstract and other things, from the conference organizing secretary, we will get a kind of communication via WhatsApp or else email, whether our abstract is selected or not. If our abstract is selected, that is the green signal for us to proceed with the full-length paper. So we are going to have time limitation as well as duration before developing the full-length paper. First thing is, maybe if the paper is not ready, but research idea is ready in your mind, you can develop the abstract. And once the abstract is selected, we are going to have at least a month time to get ready with the full-length paper. And in an Indian context, if it is not a month duration, at least 2 full weeks will be given for the full-length papers. And the first, actually, when we receive the brochure, there is always a kind of date, the date for registration, date for submitting the abstract, and whether the abstract is selected or not, that dateline. Like that, for every segment, the dateline has been printed, or always it is included in the brochure itself. So there is always going to be a clue regarding the full-length paper for us. So that we could, as a researcher, we have the comfort and convenience of developing the paper as per the given timeline. Then the paper, so the next thing regarding the full-length paper development is introduction, then research question, and there and either the paper objective will be given in the form of introduction, or else if you have the research questions or rational statement of problem, these things will come under introduction. So introduction, we will just write what is the purpose of this research article and what is the objective of this paper, and using this paper, what are the research question has been raised, or the hypothesis of the research, or the statement of the problem. Everything will be mentioned under introduction. After that, we will provide, the researcher will proceed with the literature review. Literature review, we will concentrate, the researcher would concentrate about the earlier works, existing work, which has been published in print as well as in web sources. So those referential works which you read and understood based on your research has been written as a kind of literature review. So in a nutshell, literature review is nothing but the earlier researches or the earliest studies or the earlier investigation done on your specific research area. Then the research methodology. Here we will talk about what sort of methodology as a researcher you are going to involve. Like, is it going to be a case study or an opinioner, or how the data would be collected, or what are the experiments you have in your mind to conduct. All those things will come under research methodology that has to be developed as a kind of paragraphs. Then the research tools used. So for non-science students, the research tools would always be a questionnaire or Google Forms, or the opinions collected, interviews, print sources from different magazines, that way. And if for science students, it is going to be the experiments conducted in the laboratory using a software or some kind of what is that kind of experiments done inside the laboratory for the research. Then based on all these things, the development paragraphs will be written, and once the paragraphs given a clear idea about how the research has been developed, and how what are the experiments have been conducted, how the study has been conducted, and what it was found at last based on the research, that we as a researcher you would be writing as a kind of findings. After finding, the paper should have conclusion and reference. This is the paper component. This is applicable for both conference paper and journal article. And here I would just like to give a note. See, whether it is a conference paper or a journal article, we have to write, this is a scientific writing, academic writing. So it has to be based on the insights, inputs, experiments, not based on our creativity or imagination or manipulation. So the point to be insisted over here is, unless you're sure about something, don't pen down. Yes, don't pen your ideas with which you are not sure about, which is not verified, which is not clarified. That is not the place for research writing. And again, the working title, this is the session title. See the working title. Now the researchers, the participants are very much clear how the keywords of the research to be selected. And abstract is nothing but overview of the paper, introduction, overview of the whole research design, research methodology and its significance. And along with that, overview of your thesis statement. See, already I talked about thesis writing. Thesis writing will not be based on one single experiment or a small sample size. It is going to be a larger group. When it comes to a paper, conference paper or a journal, we narrow down the scope from general to specific, or else we will be focusing on one single component. That is what I mean here by overview of your work with thesis statement. Here we can make it as paper statement as well. Still, and though it is a conference paper, though it is a paper for journal, we are expected to have these things like research objective, and the research methodology has to be elaborated. Then literature review should be given, and the books which you read earlier, the references you quoted from articles, everything have to come under literature review. And the data you have collected or the experiment you conducted in the laboratory has to develop as a kind of paragraphs, and findings is going to be the conclusion. What is your research helped you to arrive at? That we call it as findings. Then it could be a conclusion, suggestion, recommendation, and that's it. And after findings, we are expected to give the reference. There we will use what are the sources we have relied on to develop our paper. And always the conference, the organizing secretary or the conference, the host institution will ask us to follow a format like MLA format, APA format, or IEEE format. So that is going to be the session highlight. Now, let me say why we have to talk about conference paper. What is the necessity of a conference paper, and what is the role of a conference paper in a researcher's life, or else in a researcher's research period? See, there should be a start point for our research writing mechanism. And straight away, we cannot start writing our full thesis. So starting as a researcher, the first thing is maybe one or two conferences you can attend, and you as a participant, you can observe how the other presenters are presenting the ideas, what are the latest in your research field, and what are the theories they are talking about, what are the latest software the guys are using in the laboratory, what facilities are available, what are the limitations of your research work, what is the scope for your research, whether your topic is outdated or in trending. All those things as a researcher you are expected to identify, and the only place to get a clear idea about the research idea is attending conference only. So maybe what I would suggest you as a kind of personal research tip is start at writing conference paper. And as mentioned earlier, there is going to be thrust area specified. So that would help you to, maybe sometimes we'll club 3 or 4 thrust area along with our research. Sometimes being a very young researcher, we would be over ambitious, very particularly during the earlier stage of our research. We would be over ambitious and we would like to choose two or combine 2-3 thrust areas with our research work. Instead of choosing 2-3 thrust area, stick on to any one. Yes, which is you as a researcher, you should know which is very appropriate to your research work and the thrust area. So choose one thrust area and your research. Then the time actually, I told already, it's a kind of a messy process. The research process is a kind of it will not have it goes like a zigzag pattern. We would be registering and we would be very clueless like how we have to start the research or how to go about all those things. So to at least this would act as a start point, attending the conference as a participant. So we cannot while away the time by keep attending the conference, maybe 1 or 2 conferences. And after getting some confidence, the next stage is presenting paper for that. When it is paper writing and paper presented, that the timeline, maybe as an individual, we may not stick on to our own timetable. But when it is through a conference, there is already a fixed timetable that would help us to align our time boundary naturally. So I would suggest conference paper will make us time focus. And when we start writing conference papers based on the different segments of our research, see, we would have elaborate plans for our full research. So whenever there is a chance for you to write a conference, you maybe think of a small segment, a portion of your research, a portion of your experiment. So accordingly, you will start preparing the research paper. That will give you a better clarity about the research proceedings. All right, this is what we aim at. See, when we write the manuscript, when we write the draft, or else when we think of writing a paper only, we will get all right. This could come as a kind of part of second chapter or third chapter, like that. We'll develop clarity towards the overall proceedings about research. That's what I mean over here by better clarity about the proceedings of research. And publishing the paper in a journal is like a kind of Herculean task, but it is very easy to get it published in conference proceedings. So that will give a kind of moral motivation to the young researcher. Seeing the paper published in the proceedings will definitely boost up your motivation, and that is a kind of support which you have to give as a researcher to yourself to progress further in your research. And sometimes the host institution of the conference would take that paper. If your paper is very quality paper, it would recommend it to a journal. So always there is an advantages like that. So the advantages of writing a conference paper is everything is specified in the sense thrust area, time limit, everything. And the duration has been evenly distributed, like abstract submission, then registration, acceptance of your abstract, and paper, full-length paper, camera-ready paper to be submitted a deadline, or else, or sometimes a few conferences allows us to have the full paper when the day of our presentation. No need to submit the full paper beforehand also. These are all the advantages of writing a conference paper. And if your conference and if you just started present and if you presented your paper, the facilitator or the chair who how to say that, there is going, when it is a paper presentation, there is going to be a technical chair, and the co-participants would also be there. So your paper will be reviewed instantly by the technical chairperson and by the co-participants, or you would receive a feedback or suggestions that as a researcher you are expected to note down, and it will be it is easy for you to incorporate those things in your work. All right. And if it is a conference paper, there is a little relaxation regarding the plagiarism. The percentage is slightly higher, which means it should be plagiarism free. Still, for a scholarly journal, it is 15%, but in a conference proceeding, it could go up to 25%. And the plagiarism checker, when it is through a conference, the host institution would have institutionalized process. Like sometimes it is a manual checking, or institution would have developed an exclusive kind of software with a kind of a little relaxation. So that would always help you to go through the plagiarism process very simply. So that is another advantage when we think of proceeding through a conference paper. Still, there is, though we are permitted to go up to 25% of plagiarism, let's, as a researcher, from day one onwards, we should have a kind of self-orientation towards how to avoid plagiarism. So always, when you write a paper, my personal recommendation is don't typeset, write manually, and track sources and cite appropriately then and there. See, the conference the conference would suggest you always the guidelines also, like follow 8th edition of MLA or APA format or IEEE format, like that. There is always going to be a format recommended by the conference that you should consider. Accordingly, starts citing the sources appropriately from the beginning. And there is no compromise as far as using the quotation marks and punctuations and usage of acronyms, abbreviations. Those things will, if we follow it carefully, consistently from the beginning till the end of the paper, that is another simple way to avoid plagiarism. And the abstract word limit, whatever has been given in the guideline, to be exactly followed. Sometimes if it is, it happens, maybe when you check for online submission, you will face this difficulty also. If the conference institution suggests 300 as a word limit for abstract, it will not accept even a punctuation mark after the 300 character. So once after, yes, so simultaneously, you should have a paper written in black and white, and it could be typeset to check for word limit. So stick on to the word limit, that is more important. And the paper format, word count and reference, everything has to be followed as per the suggestion, as per the guidelines given for the manuscript. And when we read literature, the existing works and the earlier works, previous studies and other things, naturally, as a researcher, we will get more information, and a few ideas would be, research ideas would be impressive. And though we note down all those things, be careful. If you are allowed to use the research idea which you got impressed, which you found similar to yours. But you should not carried away by the language used in that particular research article. A research idea can be taken, but definitely not the language used over there. So either you have to paraphrase it or rephrase it. While doing paraphrasing or rephrasing, don't use the same set of keywords. When you write originally, yes, not typesetting. If you write on in the paper, naturally you will not use the same set of keywords. You will think and struggle for and identify your own choice of words. And when you paraphrase or when you rephrase, you're allowed to use customized one word substitution and synonyms. This is a too simple technique. If these two simple technique like customized one word substitution and using synonyms will help you to avoid plagiarism in the manuscript or in the paper. And all right, so now as a researcher, you have to decide whether you have to go for a conference proceedings or a journal article. Here, I'll just tell you what's the difference between a conference proceeding or else a journal article. See, the quality varies. When it is a conference proceedings, unless the host institution asked, you as a researcher need not submit the full length paper or else the camera ready paper. For conference proceeding, abstract itself is enough. And the host institution, see IIT, VIT, NIT, technical premier institutions, they as a first stage, they would go for conference proceedings. Later, they may select the quality papers after a review process and recommend it to journals also. So in that case, you as a researcher, you always have a kind of communication with the organizing secretary of the conference, and you can get it clarified whether full paper is required. If so, whether it is going to be full paper is going to be published in conference proceedings or not. In case if they publish your full paper in the conference proceeding itself, then you cannot proceed the same paper or even the same idea for journal publication. That I'll just explain it little later, how it would reflect as a kind of plagiarism. And maximum abstract is enough for conference proceeding. And we should rate whether it's worth giving our paper or not. So review and rate the conference host institution, which institution is conducting that. And the department, nowadays it is multidisciplinary departmental conference are coming up. Though it has its own advantages, sometimes it is disadvantageous also, like how history paper or the history related research can come in the paper which talks about data science or cloud computing. See the irrelevance over there. Though for the convenience of conducting the conference, it would be brought under multidisciplinary. But as a researcher, you should have an awareness how your sociology paper can appear in how to say that, how to get appeared in database journal or a cloud computing journal. So that would be a kind of irrelevant and not inappropriate. So that has to be checked. That is what here I meant by department. And the sponsors, see, UGC, AICT, DRDO, ICSSR are standard sponsors. So if they sponsor for the conference, it has its own weightage. We, as a researcher, you can understand they would stick on to the protocols. There won't be any violation of protocols. So that option is always there when we rate and review the conference host institution. And sometimes the conference would give us a chance for journal publication also. As mentioned earlier, as a part of this presentation,